Have you ever wondered what's really going on behind the headlines? What complex stuff lies beneath the surface of how things seem? Today, we're taking a deep dive into exactly that kind of story. We're pulling back the curtain on something happening right now, something with massive regional implications.
That's right. And our mission here really is to cut through all the noise. We want to extract the most vital insights from this special report we've got dated July 2025. It gives us a really detailed, kind of on-the-ground look at the new Syrian regime under Ahmad al-Shara. And specifically, his huge effort, maybe urgent is the word, to rebuild the Syrian army.
Yeah, and the big question we're trying to grapple with here is, well, it's critical, isn't it? What does the actual nature of this new army tell us about Syria's future? Which, let's face it, looks pretty uncertain, especially when you put the regime's public face, this projection of moderation, against some pretty concerning internal stuff. So let's unpack this. We've got a fascinating set of sources. Al-Shara, he took power December 2024. And almost right away, like January 2025, he starts this massive push to rebuild the army. It's all part of a bigger plan, it seems. State stabilization, national reconstruction, and a very public, very broad international diplomatic effort, too.
And what's immediately striking, really jumps out is the contrast. You've got al-Shara presenting himself as this moderate, pragmatic leader. And honestly, the U.S., Europe, they seem quite keen to engage, to lift sanctions, legitimize them. It's happening fast. But this report we're looking at, it immediately flags some pretty significant concerns about a potential radical Islamist, maybe even jihadist direction sort of lurking just beneath all that. And we saw these concerns get amplified by some troubling events. Things like the clashes, even massacres in the Al-White region back in March 2025. And then again, more recently in Suwaida, that's the Druze Mountain area, in July 2025. The report really hammers this point home. The crucial indicator, the thing to watch for Syria's future, is, and I'm quoting here, the nature of the army currently taking shape and the manner in which it is being constructed. It really suggests the military is where the story is really being told.
Okay, so how on earth do you even start rebuilding an army from, well, practically nothing after years and years of brutal civil war? The report says there's been, partial success in setting up a command structure. But what does that actually look like on the ground?
It's a surprising mix and, frankly, a potentially precarious one. The new command is largely made up of commanders from former rebel organizations, alongside officers who actually served in Assad's army. So, it's definitely not a clean slate. It feels more like a kind of forced merger of old enemies.
Wow. Okay. So what does that mean for stability then? Is this a solid foundation they're building, or is it more like a fault line waiting to crack?
Well, that's the core issue, isn't it? The report points out that many of these rebel organizations, and it mentions something like 130 of them specifically, they haven't really disbanded. Not properly. They've largely kept their internal structure, their identity, their own command chains, often operating the same areas they always did, just, under a new banner.
So they're basically mini armies within the army.
Exactly. The report calls them independent power centers. And that inherently risks undermining the central regime's control, right? Especially down the line if al-Shara tries to reassign or even dismiss some of these powerful commanders. And this difficulty, this challenge in forming a genuinely unified army, it stems from years of having hundreds of diverse rebel groups, deep tribal loyalties, and frankly, commanders who got very used to accumulating power and loyalty locally. It absolutely risks keeping those old intersectarian, inter-organizational rivalries alive, which of course works directly against building any real unity or national identity. Plus, there's a real lack of representation for many groups because appointments seem very loyalty-based.
It really sounds like an incredibly delicate balancing act. Is al-Shara, is he aware of just how unstable this setup might be? And if he is, what's he trying to do about it?
Yes. The report definitely suggests he's aware of the risks involved. He seems to be trying to mitigate them by appointing his closest confidants to really key positions across the government, but also crucially in the army. We're talking heads of intelligence, the Republican Guard, the Air Force. And interestingly, some of these trusted figures aren't actually Syrian-born. They've apparently worked with him for years, some more than a decade, and don't necessarily hold extremist views themselves.
Okay.
And meanwhile, you've got this broad recruitment campaign going on all over the country. Though it seems a bit uncoordinated, maybe. The target apparently is an army of 300,000 personnel. The idea is maybe 20 divisions, each around, say, 10,000 soldiers. But the whole process is very dynamic. Things are changing fast, and there are big information gaps, about unit numbers, resources, roles, even identities. We've seen units deployed based on immediate needs, like the clashes on the Lebanese border, or with the Alawites back in March, more recently with the Druze in Swaida in July. New frameworks, tanks, air defense, Navy are expected later, so the current picture is definitely incomplete.
Right. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk hardware, capabilities. What kind of equipment does this new army actually have? And crucially, where's it coming from?
Well, currently they're mainly using relatively basic stuff, various assault rifles, machine guns, mortars, some artillery, sniper rifles, rocket launchers, anti-tank missiles, some UAVs, anti-aircraft guns. On the heavier side, we've seen documented use of older Russian tanks like the T-72, various APCs, BMPs, BTRs, a Russian Mi-8 helicopters show up too, also Iranian Safir jeeps, some Syrian-made armored vehicles, and Turkish-provided armored vehicles in certain areas.
And where's all this kit originating?
Most of it is older gear, Soviet or Russian origin, largely captured from the former Assad regime's stockpiles. A smaller amount is apparently domestically produced, and they're also using captured weapons from Iran and other players. But there's a distinct pattern. Those divisions operating close to Turkey, often part of that Syrian National Army or SNA framework, they tend to have Turkish weaponry.
So it's a fairly basic arsenal for now. Is this likely to be the situation long term, or is it just a starting point?
The report is pretty clear on this. It assesses this as a temporary situation. And the main reason for the current lack of advanced weaponry is, well, it's down to a series of very targeted Israeli strikes. These happened shortly after the Assad regime fell. And they systematically took out most of Syria's advanced capabilities. We're talking ballistic missiles, aircraft, helicopters, naval vessels, sophisticated air defense and radar systems, artillery, even weapons production facilities. The goal, from Israel's perspective, seems to have been eliminating immediate and potential future threats, and apparently further strikes have occurred since then too.
Okay, so this is where the big international chess game really starts to heat up, right? How is this temporary lack of advanced weapons expected to change, especially with all these shifting alliances and international attention?
Exactly. It's a fascinating mix of things happening all at once. First off, you've got the al-Shura regime gaining international legitimacy at, frankly, a remarkable speed. The big moment was probably May 13th, 2025, when U.S. President Trump announced the removal of all sanctions from Syria. That's huge. But
A massive shift. What's driving that?
well, it seems to be driven by a strong desire from Western countries and also Sunni Arab states to pull Syria closer to them, away from the influence of, say, China and Russia. They recognize Syria's regional importance, its economic potential, think energy corridors, transport routes, eventual reconstruction contracts worth billions. Plus, European countries are very keen to see Syrian refugees return home. And al-Shara, for his part, has been making all the right noises, apparently. Statements designed to please the West, talking about elections, drafting a constitution, concern for minority rights, rebuilding Syria, fighting ISIS. He's even hinted he wouldn't rule out joining the Abraham Accords.
And what about Turkey's role in all this? You mentioned their influence earlier.
Yes, that's the second major factor. Turkey's support is growing, and it's very overt now, not just statements, but real economic, diplomatic, and military activity on the ground. And Turkey's clearly opposing Israeli military activity in Syria. There have even been recent reports, unconfirmed but persistent, of several aerial incidents between Turkish and Israeli aircraft over Israeli operations in Syria.
So put all that together. What are the implications for the region, but specifically for the capabilities of this new Syrian army?
Well, these trends suggest two big things are likely to happen, probably in the near to medium term. One, Israel's ability to operate freely in Syria, especially airstrikes, is probably going to be reduced. Doing so will likely carry more significant consequences than before. Think Western opposition, international condemnation, a strong Turkish reaction, maybe even active Syrian opposition using whatever systems they get. This might also apply to Israel's presence in that buffer zone in southern Syria. We could see increasing pressure for the IDF to withdraw back to the pre-Assad border.
Okay, that's one major potential shift. What's second?
The second is pretty straightforward. The al-Shara regime will almost certainly look to buy more advanced weapons, and Turkey seems very likely to be a primary supplier. Turkey has a pretty developed military industry now, right? Advanced armored vehicles, missiles, rockets, air defense systems, those famous UAVs, even ships. And their weapon systems have been battle-tested in places like Libya, Azerbaijan, and reportedly even in the Pakistan-India clashes in May 2025. So the implication is clear. There's a very real risk, from an Israeli perspective certainly, that the Syrian army could soon possess advanced Turkish weapons, some of which might be systems the Israeli military hasn't faced directly before.
Okay, that's the hardware picture. What about the people using it? What's the training like? Are we talking about a professional, unified force taking shape, or is it still pretty fragmented?
Well, based on what's been documented so far, the training appears quite basic and pretty unorganized. We see videos of small units, individual soldiers doing drills, basic shooting practice. There's definitely no evidence yet of organized training for large formations like divisions or brigades. And visually, there's a striking lack of uniformity. Between different forces, you see huge variations in soldiering skills, equipment, like some guys have modern combat gear, others have old helmets, or none at all, procedures, drills. It doesn't look cohesive yet.
But surely some of these fighters have experience.
Right, absolutely. That's the counterpoint.
Yeah.
A significant portion of the new army, or at least its senior command cadre, gained a lot of combat experience during the long Civil War. Years of fighting. So the assumption has to be that the level and complexity of training will increase over time, especially if they get sustained support from Turkey or maybe other countries. It's just not there yet, based on the current evidence.
Now, beneath all this rebuilding, the structure, the weapons, the report really highlights something potentially much more concerning: the ideological undercurrents. What does it tell us about where this army might be heading, ideologically speaking?
Yeah, this is crucial and quite worrying, frankly. A huge chunk of the personnel in this new army are former rebels from the Civil War. The vast majority are Sunni Muslims. Now, while some groups are described as Islamist, but maybe not strictly Salafi jihadist, and there are even a few semi-secular organizations reportedly involved, the report states that a significant portion of these integrated groups hold extreme ideologies, firmly on the solid jihadist spectrum.
And what does that mean in practice?
It means they view entities like the State of Israel, but also other groups like religious minorities, maybe even differing interpretations of Islam, as enemies, as infidels that, well, must be destroyed, or at the very least suppressed under strict Muslim rule. Some of these groups come directly from HTS Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which is widely recognized as a Salafi jihadist organization. Others are from the SNA framework, which, while pro-Turkish, also includes factions known for extreme positions towards Israel. And the report even raises the possibility that some of these extremist groups might try to act independently, not fully buying into the new command structure.
That sounds like a serious internal tension brewing. What about the foreign fighter element we heard so much about during the Civil War? Are they part of this new army too?
Absolutely. That's another major factor highlighted. The new Syrian army includes many recruits who aren't originally Syrian. These are combatants who came during the Civil War, settled down, and some have apparently even recently received Syrian citizenship. We're talking about groups like Chinese Uyghurs, Turkmens from various Central Asian countries, combatants from the Caucasus region like Chechnya. Many of these fighters openly aim to establish an Islamic caliphate right there in Syria and are considered extremists even within the broader jihadist movement.
So this ideological mix, it sounds like a potential powder keg.
It certainly poses a potential destabilizing force for Syria's future, especially if the regime genuinely tries to move in a more moderate or Western-oriented direction. That could create serious friction. And some of these foreign extremist groups, it seems, even oppose the al-Sharia regime itself. They operate independently, carrying out attacks. The report mentions, for instance, an attack on the Russian base in Khmeimim in May 2025 by an Islamist group of Uzbek origin, which killed 2 Russian soldiers. So the sheer range of ideologies currently swirling around in Syria, especially within that Salafi jihadist sphere, could pose a huge challenge down the road. Not just for the regime in Damascus, but also for neighbors like Israel and Jordan.
And does the report offer any sort of concrete examples of this ideology manifesting within the new army?
It does. It's quite chilling, actually. The report documents 2 specific instances that visually underscore the concern. One was a Syrian army combatant who carried out a suicide bombing during the clashes with the Druze community in July 2025. Another was a combatant identified as being from the Army's 82nd Division, who was filmed during that same fighting in Suwaida. Both of them were documented wearing ISIS patches.
Wow. ISIS patches within the ranks of the new Syrian army.
Exactly. It raises serious questions. And the report adds another layer here. It mentions that the decision to actually integrate foreign combatants known for extremist ideology, like elements from the Turkestan Islamic Party, or TIP, which has known ties to al-Qaeda and includes many Chinese Uyghurs, apparently received American approval.
American approval? How is that explained?
The stated rationale, according to the report, was that this was an attempt to halt defections from these groups to ISIS and to try and, control these elements by bringing them inside the army's formal structure. Whether that strategy works or backfires, that remains to be seen.
Okay, so given this incredibly complex ideological landscape and the challenge of mixing former enemies, former rebels, foreign fighters, how does this all play out in the actual leadership, in the divisions on the ground? Can you give us a few specific examples from the report that really illustrate this mosaic?
Certainly, and looking at the specifics really drives home the contradictions. Let's take the senior command. The Minister of Defense is Marhaf Abu Qassara. He was a top military commander for HTS, that Salafi jihadist group we just talked about. Central figure in the offensive that brought down Assad. Holds an engineering degree, interestingly. But then his Deputy Minister of Defense, Mohammed Khair Hassan Shuaib, is actually a former officer from Assad's own army. Defected, led a rebel group, but that group eventually integrated into a coalition under HTS. So you have a former HTS leader and a former Assad officer now working side by side at the very top.
That's quite the pairing.
Isn't it? And then you see the external influences clearly. The Assistant Minister of Defense is Fahim Isa. He commanded the Sultan Murad Brigade, which is strongly pro-Turkish, part of the SNA, fought the Kurds, known for close ties to Turkish politicians. There are even reports mentioned in our source that his forces were sent by Turkey to fight in Azerbaijan and Libya. Shows that direct Turkish link right in the ministry.
Okay, so that's the top brass. What about the divisions doing the actual fighting? Do they reflect this mix too?
Absolutely. Let's look at a few examples mentioned in the report. The 84th Division, based in Latakia. It's described as a special forces division, meant to be quite large eventually. A significant chunk of its fighters are those foreign combatants we discussed: Chinese, Uyghurs, Uzbeks, Tajiks, Chechens. Many are linked to Tipin, that al-Qaeda-affiliated Salafi jihadist group aiming for a caliphate. And remember, their integration apparently had U.S. blessing. That division really embodies the foreign extremist element.
Right. A stark example. Any others?
Then there's the 82nd Division, operating near Hama and the coast. Its commander is Khaled Mohammed Halabi. He's another former Assad officer, but he later became the commander of Ansar al-Tawhid, an extreme Salafi jihadist group that reportedly even cooperated with ISIS at times. It was forces from this division, the 82nd, that were filmed wearing those ISIS patches during the fighting in Soweto in July 2025.
So, a former Assad officer leading extremists who wear ISIS patches under the banner of the new Syrian Army.
Precisely. It highlights the deeply troubling ideological currents and the sheer complexity, the contradictory nature of who is now part of this force. One more quick example.
Please.
The 62nd Division, this one is based on the Sultan Suleiman Shah Division, known for very strong Turkish backing. They fought alongside the Turkish army against Kurdish forces. Its commander, Mohammed al-Jassem, is actually under international sanctions for alleged abuses against Kurds, kidnappings, torture, murder. And many of his senior officers are reportedly his own relatives or close associates, again showing that deep Turkish influence and the integration of groups with very problematic records.
These examples really paint a picture. It's not just mixed, it's potentially volatile.
That seems a fair assessment based on the report's findings.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you listening right now? Well, understanding this detailed, often really contradictory reality of how this new Syrian army is being built, it gives you a crucial lens, a way to interpret future events in the region, especially around Syria's internal stability or lack thereof, and how the regional power dynamics might shift. Because while al-Shura is out there projecting moderation, seeking international acceptance, the actual nature of his army tells a different story. It's this mix of rebranded militias, commanders with wildly different backgrounds and loyalties, some from Assad's regime, some HTS, some Turkish proxies, plus these deeply embedded radical ideologies, and a growing reliance on Turkey. It paints a very complex, very dynamic, and yet potentially unstable picture for Syria's future. The report suggests, some partial success in the rebuilding effort, but it also clearly flags these significant inherent risks. So here's something to think about. Given this huge ambition to build a single, unified national army, but the ground reality of keeping old militia structures intact, integrating extremist ideologies, and factoring in this major shift in international and regional support, what are the real chances? Can this new Syrian army actually become the foundation for a genuinely stable Syrian state? Or is it more likely perhaps to become the catalyst for yet more internal conflict or even wider regional instability?
Yeah, and it really raises a fundamental question, doesn't it? In today's world, with these constantly shifting geopolitical alliances, the nonstop flow of information, how well can we really gauge the true direction a country is heading? Especially when its most foundational institutions, like its military, are built on such a tangled mosaic of past loyalties, powerful external influences, and these deeply held, sometimes radically opposing beliefs. It's something to really ponder.